Imagine finding a wallet on a crowded street when you haven't eaten in days. Now imagine seeing the name inside, Bill Gates. But what happens next isn't just about money or doing the right thing. It's about a hidden plan that would change everything. The streets bustled with activity, a chaotic mix of honking cars, street vendors, and pedestrians weaving through the city's endless flow. On a quiet corner sat a man who seemed invisible to the world, his clothes worn, his eyes fixed on the ground. He was just another face in the crowd, or so it seemed. Thomas had once been like everyone else, navigating life's ups and downs, but a series of unfortunate events had left him on the streets, clutching at hope, like a thread unraveling in his hands. He didn't stand out, and most people passed him by without a second glance. That day started like any other. He sat at his usual spot, hoping for enough change to buy a meal. The steady rhythm of the city provided a backdrop to his thoughts, until something unusual caught his eye. A sleek wallet lying a few feet away on the pavement. It was out of place, clean and well-crafted, unlike anything he'd seen in years. Thomas hesitated. He glanced around, half expecting someone to rush back for it, but no one did. His curiosity got the better of him. Picking it up, he opened it cautiously. Inside were crisp bills, several credit cards, and an ID. That stopped him in his tracks. William Henry Gates III. He blinked. Could it really belong to Bill Gates? The name was unmistakable. For a moment, temptation flickered. The cash could buy him meals for weeks, maybe even a place to sleep. But Thomas quickly pushed the thought aside. He knew what he had to do. What Thomas didn't realize was that his decision would set off a series of events no one could have anticipated. When Gates himself checked the security footage later that day, what he discovered would leave him speechless and forever change Thomas's life. Thomas clutched the wallet tightly in his hands, suddenly feeling its weight more than ever. He glanced around, hoping for some clue as to who might have dropped it, but the crowd surged on, indifferent to his quiet corner of the world. The name on the ID card swirled in his mind. Bill Gates? Could it really be him? The thought felt surreal, almost absurd. What would the world's richest man be doing walking through these streets, much less dropping his wallet? But there was no mistaking it. The photo on the ID matched the face Thomas had seen countless times, in newspapers, on TV, and even on billboards advertising philanthropy campaigns. It was him. The realization made Thomas's hands tremble slightly. He had heard stories about Gates, his fortune, his generosity, and his involvement in changing lives around the globe. Yet holding this small piece of his life, Thomas felt a strange sense of connection. As he studied the wallet, Thomas noticed it wasn't just filled with cash and cards. There was a handwritten note tucked behind the ID. Something simple, yet deeply personal. The words read, "Every small action matters. Never underestimate its impact." It struck a chord. He wondered what it meant to Gates, but more importantly, he thought about what it meant for him in that moment. The day had been harsh, like most others. Hours spent sitting on the cold pavement, hoping for a few coins, and managing to avoid the judgmental stares of strangers. This wallet, however, was a sudden twist in the monotony, a chance to do something meaningful. But how? Thomas had no phone, no address, and no way to directly contact its owner. Returning it wasn't as simple as knocking on someone's door. Thomas considered his options. He could take it to the nearest police station, but the idea felt wrong somehow. Would the wallet even make it back to Gates, or would it get lost in bureaucracy? He wanted to ensure it reached the man himself. The question was how. He decided to take the first step by asking around. Gathering his belongings, a small backpack containing everything he owned, he left his usual spot and approached the first cafe he found. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and pastries. Thomas hesitated at the counter, acutely aware of the contrast between him and the well-dressed patrons sipping lattes and typing on laptops. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely audible over the chatter. The barista, a young woman with bright red hair, looked up with mild surprise. "Do you know if Bill Gates was around here today? Or if there's a place nearby where he might have been?" The question earned him a skeptical glance, but to her credit, the barista didn't brush him off. "Gates?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You mean the Bill Gates? I don't know, but there's an event at the convention center down the street. A lot of big names are in town for it. Maybe try there? Thomas thanked her, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. He didn't know what he would find at the convention center, but it was his best lead. He tightened his grip on the wallet and started walking. The streets grew busier as he approached the grand building, its glass facade gleaming under the afternoon sun. People in suits and dresses streamed in and out, their movements brisk and purposeful. Thomas hesitated at the entrance. Security guards stood watch, their sharp eyes scanning the crowd. He knew he would stand out here. His tattered clothes and unshaven face would draw attention. Not the kind he wanted. Still, he couldn't let fear stop him. Taking a deep breath, he approached one of the guards. "Excuse me," Thomas began, doing his best to sound calm. "I think I found something that belongs to Mr. Gates. Is there any way I could get it back to him?" The guard looked him up and down, clearly skeptical. "You're saying you found Bill Gates's wallet?" "Yes," Thomas replied, holding it up as proof. "I just want to return it." The guard's expression softened slightly as he realized Thomas wasn't joking. He nodded toward a nearby desk. "You'll need to talk to the event staff. They can help you out." Thomas followed the instructions, stepping into a sleek reception area filled with people. The staff at the desk listened patiently as he explained the situation. One of them, a woman in a navy blazer, seemed particularly interested. "You found his wallet?" she asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and disbelief. "And you're here to return it?" "That's right," Thomas said simply. "It's not mine to keep." She studied him for a moment before responding. "Wait here," she said, disappearing into the crowd. As Thomas stood there, the minutes stretched endlessly. He could feel the weight of the wallet in his hand, a constant reminder of the decision he'd made. Doubts began to creep in. What if they didn't believe him? What if Gates wasn't even here? But just as he started to second-guess himself, the woman returned, this time with another man in tow. "You're the one who found Mr. Gates's wallet?" the man asked, his voice calm and professional. "Yes," Thomas said again, handing it over. The man opened it, checking its contents carefully. He nodded, satisfied, then looked back at Thomas. "You've done a good thing," he said. "Wait here for a moment." Thomas wasn't sure what to expect, but he stayed put. It wasn't long before the man returned, this time with a message. "Mr. Gates would like to thank you personally. Follow me." Thomas followed the man through the grand corridors of the convention center. The polished floors reflected the overhead lights, and the hum of conversations echoed from distant rooms. He clutched his old backpack, feeling out of place but determined to see this through. The man led him to a private lounge guarded by 2 security personnel. With a nod, they allowed Thomas inside. The room was surprisingly understated. Comfortable leather chairs, a sleek coffee table, and a small arrangement of snacks on the side. At the far end of the room stood the man he recognized instantly. Bill Gates. Gates looked up from a tablet as they entered, his expression curious. He wasn't the larger-than-life figure Thomas had imagined, but rather a man who carried himself with calm confidence. Dressed in a simple sweater and slacks, Gates seemed approachable yet composed. "Mr. Gates," the man accompanying Thomas began, "this is the gentleman who found your wallet." Gates's gaze shifted to Thomas, and a smile crept onto his face. "Well, it seems I owe you a thank you," he said, walking over and extending his hand. Thomas hesitated for a moment before shaking it, still trying to process the surreal moment. "It wasn't a hard decision," Thomas replied. "It's yours. I just wanted to make sure it got back to you." Gates took the wallet, flipping it open to confirm its contents. His expression changed slightly as he noticed the note tucked behind his ID. "Did you read this?" he asked, holding up the slip of paper. Thomas nodded. "I did. The words meant something to me. They reminded me that even small actions can make a difference." Gates paused, his eyes narrowing slightly as if studying Thomas more closely. "I wrote that note as a reminder to myself," he said. "I never thought someone else would find it and connect with it." For a moment, silence filled the room. Gates seemed deep in thought, and Thomas shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what to say. Then, Gates broke the silence. "You're not just returning a wallet. You've acted on something most people overlook. Integrity. Tell me, what's your story?" The question caught Thomas off guard. He wasn't used to being asked about himself, let alone by someone like Gates. but something about the moment felt genuine, as though Gates truly wanted to know. "I don't have much of a story," Thomas began hesitantly. "I used to have a job, a home, a family, but life took a turn. Layoffs, bills piling up, losing everything one piece at a time. Now, I just try to get through each day." Gates listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "That's not nothing," he said. "What you've been through matters, and what you chose to do today says a lot about you." Thomas shrugged, unsure how to respond. He had expected to return the wallet, maybe get a quick thank you and leave, but this felt different. There was something in Gates's tone that made him feel seen. "Do you mind if I check something?" Gates asked suddenly, gesturing toward a laptop on the coffee table. Thomas wasn't sure what he meant, but nodded anyway. Gates typed quickly, pulling up a video feed from earlier in the day. It was security footage from the street where Thomas had found the wallet. The screen showed Thomas sitting in his usual spot, the crowd bustling around him. Then the wallet appeared, falling unnoticed from someone's pocket as they walked by. Thomas's hesitation was evident as he reached for it, and the footage clearly captured his reaction as he opened it and read the ID. Gates glanced at Thomas, a slight smile playing on his lips. "You had every reason to walk away with this," he said, tapping the screen. "But you didn't. That tells me everything I need to know about you." Thomas felt his cheeks flush slightly. He wasn't used to this kind of attention, and he didn't know what to say. "It just didn't feel right," he muttered. "It's not who I am." Gates leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Thomas. "People like you are rare," he said finally. "The world needs more of that kind of honesty." Before Thomas could respond, Gates stood and walked over to a desk in the corner of the room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small envelope, which he handed to Thomas. "This is for you," he said. Thomas stared at the envelope, unsure whether to take it. "I don't need anything," he said. "I just wanted to do the right thing." "And you did," Gates replied. "This isn't a reward. It's an opportunity." Curiosity got the better of him, and Thomas opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded letter and a business card. The letter explained a program Gates had launched to help individuals get back on their feet, offering job training, temporary housing, and access to resources. The business card was for a contact at the foundation, someone Thomas could call to get started. Thomas's hands shook slightly as he read. He looked up at Gates, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" "Because small actions matter," Gates said simply. "You reminded me of that today." The two men sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the exchange settling over them. For Thomas, this wasn't just a chance to rebuild his life. It was a reminder that kindness and integrity still had a place in the world. Thomas left the convention center clutching the envelope and business card like they were the most valuable possessions in the world. The warm glow of what had just transpired lingered, but as he walked back toward his usual spot on the street, reality began to creep in. The doubts, the insecurities, and the weight of his struggles, it all felt impossible to shake. That night, Thomas sat under the same overhang where he usually rested. The envelope lay beside him, unopened except for his initial glance at its contents. He stared at the business card, turning it over in his hands. The contact information was printed in sharp, clean letters, but he hesitated to call. Could he really trust this? Did he deserve this kind of help? The questions gnawed at him. As the hours stretched on, the city's noise began to quiet, leaving Thomas alone with his thoughts. Memories of his past life came flooding back. His job at the factory, the small apartment he'd once shared with his wife and daughter. Losing it all had felt like a slow-motion fall, each piece of his life slipping away no matter how hard he tried to hold on. Could this opportunity be his chance to climb back up? The next morning, Thomas decided to take the first step. Clutching the business card, he made his way to a nearby library. It was one of the few places he felt welcome, a quiet refuge where he could use the public phone. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, recognized him and greeted him with a warm smile. "Morning, Thomas," she said. "Need the phone today?" He nodded. "Yeah, got something important to take care of." She gestured toward the small desk in the corner where the phone sat. "Take your time." Thomas dialed the number on the card, his hands trembling slightly. It rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. "Gates Foundation, how can I assist you?" "Hi, Thomas began, his voice shaky. "I was told to call this number. My name is Thomas. I found Mr. Gates's wallet, and he gave me a card to contact someone here." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a shift in tone. Still warm, but now with a hint of urgency. "Oh yes, Mr. Gates mentioned you. Let me transfer you to the program coordinator." The line clicked, and a new voice came on. "Mr. Thomas, this is Lisa, the coordinator for the outreach program. We've been expecting your call." Thomas wasn't sure what to say. The kindness in her voice was disarming, and he felt his usual walls begin to lower. "I wasn't sure if I should call," he admitted. "I didn't want to waste anyone's time." "Not at all," Lisa replied. "We're here to help, and Mr. Gates spoke highly of you. Let's set up a meeting to go over the program and how we can support you." A meeting. The idea felt both exciting and terrifying. Thomas agreed, and Lisa gave him the details for a visit to their office later that week. As he hung up, a mix of hope and anxiety filled him. This could be the start of something new, but he couldn't ignore the fear of failure. The day of the meeting arrived quickly. Thomas found himself standing in front of a sleek office building, its glass doors reflecting the bustling street behind him. He adjusted his worn jacket, feeling out of place, but determined. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by a receptionist who directed him to the third floor. The office was bright and welcoming, with motivational posters lining the walls and people moving purposefully from one desk to another. Lisa, the program coordinator, greeted him with a warm handshake. She was in her late 30s, dressed professionally but with an approachable demeanor. "Thomas, it's great to finally meet you," she said, leading him to a small conference room. "Let's talk about how we can help." Over the next hour, Lisa explained the details of the program. It included temporary housing, job training, and access to counseling services. The goal was to help individuals like Thomas regain stability and rebuild their lives. As she spoke, Thomas felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: hope. "You've already taken the hardest step by reaching out," Lisa said. "The rest we'll figure out together." Thomas left the meeting with a folder of resources and a sense of cautious optimism. For the first time in years, it felt like the ground beneath him was solid. But as he walked back to his usual spot, he couldn't shake the fear that it was all too good to be true. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Thomas moved into temporary housing provided by the program, a modest but clean apartment that felt like a palace compared to the streets. He attended job training sessions, learning skills that could open new doors. Slowly but surely, he began to rebuild. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Adjusting to a structured life after years of instability was harder than he expected. There were moments when the weight of his past threatened to pull him back, times when he questioned whether he deserved this second chance. It was during one of these low moments that he received a call. "Thomas, it's Mr. Gates," the voice on the other end said. "I wanted to check in and see how you're doing." Thomas was stunned. You didn't have to do that," he stammered. "I wanted to," Gates replied. "You took a leap of faith when you returned my wallet. It's only fair I do the same for you." The conversation was brief but powerful. Gates's words reminded Thomas that he wasn't alone in this journey, that someone believed in him. It was the push he needed to keep moving forward. As weeks turned into months, Thomas's life began to take shape in ways he never imagined. He secured a job at a local nonprofit, using his newfound skills to help others in need. The people he once passed on the streets now saw him as a source of inspiration, a reminder that change was possible. One evening, as he walked home from work, he spotted a familiar figure on the corner. It was another man, much like he had been, sitting quietly with a cardboard sign. Without hesitation, Thomas approached him, offering a warm meal and a listening ear. He saw himself in that man, and he knew he couldn't turn away. One crisp autumn morning, Thomas received an unexpected invitation. It came in the form of a handwritten letter from the Gates Foundation, neatly folded and sealed in an envelope with his name printed on the front. Inside, the message was simple but powerful. "Thomas, you've come a long way. We'd like to honor your journey. Join us at our annual gala this Saturday. Sincerely, Bill Gates." Thomas stared at the letter for a long moment, his mind racing. A gala? Him? The thought of walking into a room filled with influential people felt overwhelming, but he also understood the significance of the invitation. It wasn't just about him, it was about the journey he had taken and the opportunities he now had to inspire others. The night of the gala arrived quickly. For the first time in years, Thomas wore a suit. It wasn't designer or expensive, but it fit him well, both physically and emotionally, a symbol of how far he had come. As he arrived at the venue, a grand hall glittering with lights and filled with the hum of conversation, he felt a familiar pang of doubt. But he pushed it aside, determined to honor the moment. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Guests mingled over glasses of champagne, their laughter and chatter filling the room. Thomas felt out of place at first, but a friendly staff member guided him to a reserved table near the stage. The name card read simply, "Thomas, honored guest." As he sat, the lights dimmed, and Bill Gates took the stage. The room fell silent as he began to speak. Every year, this gala serves as a reminder of the power of small actions. Tonight, I want to share a story that has stayed with me. A story about integrity, kindness, and the extraordinary potential of ordinary people. Thomas's heart pounded as Gates recounted the tale of the lost wallet, weaving the events into a powerful narrative. He spoke of Thomas's decision to return it, the challenges he had faced, and the transformation he had undergone. Thomas's journey reminds us that even in the most difficult circumstances, we have the power to choose what's right. And sometimes those choices can change everything. The audience erupted into applause as Gates gestured toward Thomas's table. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Thomas to the stage. For a moment, Thomas froze. The thought of standing before such an audience felt daunting, but the encouragement in Gates's voice gave him the courage to rise. As he walked to the stage, the applause grew louder, a wave of support that buoyed him forward. On stage, Thomas stood beside Gates, gripping the microphone tightly. His voice wavered as he began to speak, but soon the words flowed. "I never thought I'd be here," he admitted. "When I found that wallet, I didn't see it as a chance for reward. I saw it as an opportunity to do the right thing." He paused, glancing at the audience. "What I didn't realize was that doing the right thing would lead to all of this, to a second chance at life, to the belief that even someone like me could make a difference." The room was silent, captivated by his honesty. I want to thank Mr. Gates, not just for what he's done for me, but for what he's reminded me, and all of us, that kindness matters, integrity matters, and no matter where we are in life, we have the power to lift each other up. As he stepped away from the microphone, the audience rose to their feet, the applause thunderous and unrelenting. It wasn't just a moment of recognition. It was a celebration of hope, resilience, and the belief that even small actions can create ripples of change. As the applause began to fade, Thomas stepped off the stage, his heart still racing from the overwhelming response. People approached him with handshakes and words of encouragement, their faces beaming with admiration. For the first time in years, Thomas felt like he truly belonged. Bill Gates joined him near the side of the stage. "You did well, Thomas," he said with a genuine smile. "Your story is more than just yours now. It's a reminder for all of us." Thomas nodded, still processing the moment. "I never thought this would happen. I didn't even know what to expect when I returned your wallet." "Sometimes," Gates replied, "the smallest decisions lead to the most extraordinary outcomes. But Thomas, this isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning." As the gala continued, Thomas found himself reflecting on Gates's words. The thought lingered as he returned home that night, sitting in his small but comfortable apartment. The letter from the gala lay on the table beside him, next to the business card that had started it all. For the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful about the future. Days turned into weeks, and Thomas's life took on a new rhythm. His job at the nonprofit was thriving, and he had become a source of inspiration for others. The people he once passed on the streets now looked up to him as a symbol of resilience and kindness. But something still gnawed at him, a lingering feeling that his journey wasn't complete. One evening, as he was closing up the office, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Thomas, this is Lisa from the Gates Foundation," the voice on the other end said. "There's something I think you should see. Can you come to the office tomorrow?" The call left him uneasy, but curious. The next day, Thomas found himself back in the same sleek office building, this time greeted with a sense of familiarity. Lisa met him in the lobby, her expression serious but warm. "Thomas," she began, "we've been following your progress, and we've discovered something you might want to know." She led him to a conference room where a laptop was set up with a video feed. On the screen was footage from the security cameras near the spot where Thomas had found the wallet. Lisa clicked play, and Thomas watched as the familiar scene unfolded, him sitting on the corner, spotting the wallet, and deciding to pick it up. But then, something caught his attention. Just before the wallet fell, a man brushed past, his movements deliberate. Thomas leaned closer to the screen, his brow furrowing. The man seemed to glance at Thomas before walking away quickly. "Wait," Thomas said. "That wasn't an accident. He dropped it on purpose." Lisa nodded. "We thought the same. It seems this wasn't just a chance encounter. Someone wanted you to find that wallet." Thomas felt a chill run through him. "But why? And who?" "We're not sure yet," Lisa admitted. "But it's clear there's more to this story than we thought." Thomas left the office that day with more questions than answers. The idea that someone had intentionally planted the wallet left him both unsettled and intrigued. As he walked through the bustling city streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that his journey wasn't just a coincidence. The note in the wallet echoed in his mind. Every small action matters. Never underestimate its impact. Those words had guided him, but now they seemed to carry a deeper meaning, one he couldn't yet understand. Who had orchestrated this? And why had they chosen him? The answers felt just out of reach, but Thomas knew one thing. He couldn't stop now. This wasn't just about a lost wallet or even his own transformation. It was part of something bigger, something that would change everything once he uncovered the truth. And so, as Thomas stood on the same corner where it all began, he looked out at the city with a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. What if the wallet wasn't lost by accident? What if Thomas's story is just the first piece of a much larger puzzle? Stay tuned for the next chapter where the truth behind the mysterious act begins to unfold and reveals a secret that could change everything.